Welcome back to Politics Nation. Tomorrow, the nation will recognize the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I'm in Washington tonight ahead of the federal holiday and a day of commemorative events held by the National Action Network. My mind, of course, will be on the state of King's dream under an administration that is rolling back civil rights consistently, downplaying Black history and achievement, and appears to be targeting people of color for mass deportation while employing white supremacist rhetoric in that effort. Joining me now is Martin Luther King III, chairman of the Drum Major Institute, and Andrea Waters King, president of the Drum Major Institute, the corporation organization Dr. King incorporated himself. Andrea, I want to start with you on the topic of civil rights with regards to Minneapolis. For Americans outside of the Twin Cities or any of the cities we've seen clashes between protesters and ICE, why should they care about what they are seeing and what we are seeing in Minnesota right now, or Los Angeles, or Washington, or Portland, or other places over the past year?
The reason why we should all care is the fact that if you think about the civil rights movement, we talk a lot about love within that movement, but when we're talking about love, we're not talking about the sentimental form and version of love. That's one form of love. We're talking about the acknowledgement of the fact of our shared humanity and how we are all interconnected. And to that point, we cannot see anyone that's being targeted or hurt that is not impacting us. You know, those children that are being targeted or being hurt, those are the same as our children. And from a spiritual standpoint and from a realistic standpoint, we understand that, in particularly in the Black community, that those very same tactics, those very same attitudes that are being targeted right now to our brown brothers and sisters are certainly those same attitudes that are being that are attacking civil rights, that are attacking our children as well.
Now, Martin, your father understood the power of imagery and used television and press exposure to gain sympathy for the movement. How do you think he might have responded and urged us to respond to these viral videos of federal officers brutalizing people in Minneapolis and elsewhere?
Well, you know, one of the things that's interesting to me, Rev, is that this is exactly what our community was exposed to back in the Birmingham. If we look at Birmingham, or we look at Dallas County, in Selma, the same kind of tactics were used. So it's not anything new. I think the challenge is, how do we get more people engaged to actually resist, and resisting in a nonviolent way is more and more difficult. Not that we never should reduce ourselves to not, but the fact of the matter is, this is the exact same thing that was happening many, many years ago. It's sad that we're still there. We have not learned. The reality is, we still have not learned the message that Dad and his team used, the techniques that Dad and his team used. We're getting more and more dangerous. Darkness, Dad would say, will never put out darkness. Only light can do that. So we have to figure out, how do we employ a light strategy that gets the nation galvanized to say, we are not going to tolerate this kind of behavior. We are much better than the behavior we're exhibiting.
Andrea, I want to talk about the tactics we've seeing employed in Minneapolis right now, because it seems to me like the Trump administration wants to provoke a wider fight to justify a harder crackdown. At time, when polls show the public opinion soaring on ICE's action, which is why, in my opinion, it's important that the resistance remain nonviolent. Your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I think it's critical that they remain nonviolent. I think it's also important for us to keep talking about the fact that they're overwhelmingly, that they have been nonviolent. I think we also need to point back to the fact that the rhetoric that we're hearing and the actions that we're hearing, as you know, Rev, I worked for Reverend C.T. Vivian for many years. And we monitored hate groups and hate crimes such as the Ku Klux Klan, neo-Nazis, and skinheads. And the things that I would hear when we were researching that were coming from those communities in the mid-90s are literally now coming directly from the Oval Office. And so we're at a point where not only is oppression being legislated, but it's being highlighted and lifted up. And so as we're coming out and we are standing not against anything, but when we're standing for the principles of democracy and peace and justice and equity, we have the moral high ground when we're standing through nonviolence, when we're standing forcefully, but we're standing in love and we're standing for our neighbors and our brothers and sisters. That's how we've had the moral high ground, not only during the civil rights movement, but even going back through to India. Gandhi called it Satyagraha, that soul force. And that's what we are hoping to see more and more as people are coming out of their homes, as they're coming into the streets, that they are doing that in the spirit of nonviolence and standing and activating that way.
Martin, a lot of people talk about back in the day, but it's a movement of continuity. And I want to play a clip of your mother, Coretta Scott King, speaking here in Washington at a huge march that National Action Network and you were president of SCLC, called at that time. We called it the Redeem the Dream March, and it was back in year 2000, 26 years ago. Listen to this.
Today we have a new generation that is coming forward. And you know, I am just as happy as I can be to see these young people, younger people, men and women coming forth to take the torch and run with it. And that's what they are doing. And this march is about racial profiling. And I am so happy to see that Martin Luther King Jr., Martin Luther King III, as some people say Martin Luther King Jr. III, Martin Luther King III and Reverend Al Sharpton has taken on this enormous task, and so many of you who have come to support them, particularly those of you in my generation.
I look at that, and it was like putting a lot of weight on you and I. Certainly you every morning. You wake up as Martin Luther King. I can't imagine the pressure. But it also showed that it is supposed to be a continuity of struggle, and everybody's got to continue. This is not this is not a sprint. It's a marathon. Martin, what do you see as our specific battle as civil rights activists in this moment in history?
Well, Rev, I think it really is, once again, redeeming the soul of America. It feels like humanity has left. We used to care about people, not just in our community, but really around the world. And people have come to our shores. That has created an immigrant problem because we didn't have an efficient system set up to accept those who would become good citizens. But our challenge is, how do you reawaken and create the climate where we do justly and love mercy and walk humbly with our God? And that's, unfortunately, that is not happening enough. And so I think that, you know, I see some things that may be getting ready to happen in a positive way that can transform this nation, even with those who are so extremely against us. What Dad and Mom taught us is it takes a few good human beings dedicated and determined to bring about change. They left us a roadmap. We just got to grab hold of that roadmap and lead the way. And I think ultimately the conscience will be pricked of the nation, regardless of what the forces of evil are trying to do. We cannot allow that to be successful. We got to stand. We can't give in. We can't give out. We can't give up.
Which is why tomorrow is not a day off. It should be a day on. We're here in Washington. We'll start with Nan's breakfast, then on to New York, where public officials will give their report on the King, on what they've done in terms of King's legacy. And the Kings with the Drum Major Institute continue to educate and move around the country. It's not about remembering what Dr. King did. It's about what we do with what he taught us while he was here. That's why the holiday is a day on, not a day off.
That's right. Amen.
Martin Luther King III and Andrea Waters King, thank you for being with us.